The Foundational 15, Job Order Costing and Manufacturing Magic. Hello students, I'm Dr. Fulmore, and today we're about to unlock the secret sauce behind how next-gen gaming systems tracks the cost of building those custom Phantom X gaming rigs that make your PlayStation look like a calculator from 1985. You know my philosophy: to learn accounting, you must do accounting. But here's the triple entendre. Doing accounting means doing the calculations, doing the thinking, and doing better than everyone else who doesn't understand how custom gaming systems actually get priced. Today we're diving into job order costing through 15 problems featuring NextGen Corporation, a manufacturer of custom gaming systems that are basically the Lamborghinis of gaming, if Lamborghinis could run Cyberpunk 2077 at 240 frames per second in 4K. Where the numbers speak, we must listen. And today, these numbers are about to tell you why that custom gaming rig costs $3,000 when the parts seem to cost $1,000. We're starting in your world, where you customize everything from your RGB lighting to your mechanical keyboard switches, and bridging to the professional world, where customization determines whether you're profitable or just another failed Kickstarter. As Malcolm Gladwell writes in Outliers, achievement is talent plus preparation. And after today, you'll be prepared to understand exactly how NVIDIA knows what to charge for that RTX 4090 that costs more than your entire semester's textbooks. Meet NextGen Gaming Systems, your FPS dream maker's complete data set. NextGen Gaming Systems manufactures the Phantom X series, custom gaming rigs that are to gaming what Gordon Ramsay is to cooking. Expensive, impressive, and absolutely destroying anything basic. Let me paint the complete financial picture with every single number you need to understand their operation. On January 1st, they started with raw materials inventory of $40,000, graphics cards, processors, RAM in anti-static bags, work in process of $18,000, half-built systems waiting for parts, and finished goods of $35,000, completed Phantom X systems ready to ship. Their predetermined overhead rate is $16.25 per direct labor hour, calculated by dividing $650,000 in estimated total manufacturing overhead by 40,000 estimated direct labor hours for the year. During the year, here's what happened. They purchased $510,000 in raw materials, enough RGB to light Vegas. They used $480,000 of raw materials in production, all as direct materials. Labor costs totaled $990,000 broken down as $600,000 in direct labor. The builders, $150,000 in indirect labor, supervisors and QC, and $240,000 in selling and administrative salaries, sales and management. They incurred $367,000 in various selling and administrative expenses, advertising on Twitch, esports sponsorships, that sick showroom. Manufacturing overhead costs hit $500,000, depreciation, insurance, utilities for the factory. The company actually worked 41,000 direct labor hours, 1,000 more than estimated. Jobs costing $1,680,000 to manufacture were completed during the year. They sold products for $2,800,000 that cost $1,690,000 to manufacture according to job cost sheets. As Steve Jobs said, innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower, and these numbers will show us exactly how NextGen innovates through cost management. Problem 1. Journal entry for raw materials used in production. Question. What is the journal entry to record raw materials used in production? Answer. Debit work. In process $480,000. Credit raw materials $480,000. Let me explain this $480,000 transformation in a way that'll stick in your brain forever. When NextGen pulls $480,000 worth of graphics cards, processors, motherboards, RAM, SSDs, power supplies, cases, and enough RGB strips to light up Vegas from their raw materials inventory, they're not destroying value. They're transforming it, like how you transform random Steam games into a library you'll definitely play someday. Think about building your own PC, which I know at least half of you have done or dreamed about. You buy components, raw materials, then start assembling them on that anti-static mat your paranoid friend insisted you needed. The components don't disappear into the void. They metamorphose into something greater than their individual parts. That's exactly what this journal entry captures. The moment when potential becomes progress, when parts become purpose, when your credit card debt becomes justified. From a gaming perspective, it's exactly like crafting legendary gear in any RPG you've ever played. You take rare materials from your inventory and combine them into epic equipment. The materials aren't destroyed. They're evolved into their final form. The debit to work in process increases that asset account because we're adding value through transformation. Those components are now part of something bigger. The credit to raw materials decreases that asset because those materials are no longer sitting in boxes. They're becoming Phantom X systems. Warren Buffett says, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get," and this entry captures next-gen, paying $480,000 for components, but creating significantly more value through expert assembly, optimization, and that premium Phantom X branding. Think about how this compares to your life. You buy textbooks, raw materials, read and annotate them, work in process, and eventually that knowledge becomes part of your degree, finished goods. The books don't vanish, they transform into education. Michael Dell revolutionized this exact process by tracking component flow so precisely he could build to order with minimal inventory, understanding that raw materials sitting unused were like your Steam backlog, potentially valuable but currently worthless until activated. Problem 2. Ending balance in raw materials. Question: what is the ending balance in raw materials? Answer: $70,000. Here's your inventory flow formula bringing truth to power. Beginning balance $40,000 plus purchases $510,000 minus used in production. $480,000 equals ending balance $70,000. This $70,000 represents next-gen's strategic reserve of components, like keeping extra lives in a classic arcade game. You hope you won't need them, but you're grateful when that clutch moment arrives. Think about your own gaming setup evolution over the past year. You started with some components in boxes, beginning inventory, bought more throughout the year, especially during Black Friday and Prime Day when your willpower crumbled, purchases, used most of them for builds or upgrades, usage, and what's left is sitting in that drawer we all have full of cables and components we're definitely going to use, ending inventory. That $70,000 is next-gen's version of that drawer, except theirs is actually organized and has a purpose. This ending balance is absolutely crucial for a custom builder in today's market. Too much inventory means cash tied up in components that might become obsolete faster than your New Year's resolutions. Remember when DDR4 RAM was the standard and suddenly DDR5 made it ancient history. But too little inventory means telling customers their dream build has to wait 6 to 8 weeks for parts, and in the instant gratification economy, that customer is already buying from your competitor. Consider what happened during the great GPU shortage of 2021 to 2022. When crypto miners bought everything, companies with no inventory couldn't build systems at any price, while those hoarding GPUs were sitting on depreciating assets when crypto crashed harder than your K/D ratio in ranked matches. Next-gen $70,000 represents about 1.75 months of usage, $480,000 annual usage divided by 12 months equals $40,000 per month, which is lean enough to stay agile but substantial enough to handle custom orders. Sam Walton built Walmart on inventory turnover, saying, "The secret of successful retailing is to give your customers what they want." And in gaming terms, customers want their custom rigs now, not in 6 weeks when parts finally arrive from overseas. This balance lets next-gen say yes to dream builds while not drowning in inventory that becomes obsolete faster than last year's iPhone. Problem 3. Journal entry to record labor costs. Question: what is the journal entry to record the labor costs? Answer: debit work in process $600,000, debit manufacturing overhead $150,000, debit selling and administrative expense $240,000, credit salaries and wages payable $990,000. This $990,000 total compensation breaks down into 3 critical categories, and understanding why we split them this way is like understanding why your Overwatch team needs DPS, tanks, and support. Each serves a different function, but all are necessary for victory. The $600,000 going to work in process represents direct labor. These are the master builders who know that cable management is an art form, thermal paste application is a science, and that one loose connection can turn a $3,000 system into an expensive paperweight. These technicians directly touch and transform products, like how a chef directly creates your meal, not the restaurant manager. The $150,000 flowing to manufacturing overhead is indirect labor. The supervisors ensuring quality, the people testing systems, the folks maintaining equipment. They're like the coaching staff in esports. They don't play the game directly, but without them, the players, direct labor, couldn't perform at peak level. That $240,000 hitting selling and administrative expense represents the sales team convincing customers they absolutely need liquid nitrogen cooling for their Minecraft server, and the administrative staff keeping the business running smoothly. Think about it like your university. Professors are direct labor, directly delivering education. Department heads and lab coordinators are indirect labor, supporting education delivery, and admissions, marketing are administrative, bringing in customers, students. Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule applies perfectly here. Those direct labor technicians have spent 10,000 hours learning why you never cheap out on the power supply, why thermal throttling is the enemy, and how to make cables look like art. Their expertise commands premium wages, which flows directly into product cost, which justifies NextGen's premium pricing. Andrew Carnegie once said, "The first man gets the oyster, the second man gets the shell," and properly classifying labor costs ensures NextGen knows exactly what each oyster gaming system costs to harvest. This isn't just bookkeeping, it's strategic cost management that separates profitable companies from those featured in bankruptcy documentaries. Problem 4. Total manufacturing overhead applied to production. Question: what is the total manufacturing overhead applied to production? Answer: $666,250, 41,000 actual direct labor hours times $16.25 predetermined rate. Let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, that number has a lot of sixes, but it's not cursed. It's just math being dramatic, like your GPU temperatures when you forgot to remove the plastic from the cooler. We calculate this by multiplying 41,000 actual direct labor hours worked by our predetermined rate of $16.25 per hour, giving us $666,250 in applied overhead. This overhead is like all your gaming subscriptions combined: Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Discord Nitro, Twitch Prime, that EA Play subscription you forgot to cancel, invisible but absolutely essential to your gaming lifestyle. This $666,250 covers everything that makes production possible, but can't be traced to specific builds. Imagine trying to assign the exact cost of factory air conditioning to one specific gaming rig. Impossible, but without it, technicians couldn't work and components would overheat before they even got installed. It includes facility rent, because building gaming rigs in your garage doesn't scale beyond your 3 friends. Equipment depreciation, those specialized testing stations and assembly tools wear out. Utilities, do you have any idea how much electricity a room full of test benches pulls? Insurance, because one wrong move with liquid cooling equals catastrophe. And supervision, someone needs to ensure nobody installs RAM in the PCIe slot. Think about streaming on Twitch to understand overhead. You can track the cost of your PC and camera, direct costs. But what about internet allocation, electricity for those 8-hour streams, wear on your chair, emotional damage from chat, and that ring light that makes you not look like a cave goblin? That's overhead, necessary for production but impossible to trace to specific streams. The $16.25 per hour rate means every hour a technician spends building your dream rig carries this invisible burden of infrastructure cost. Jeff Bezos says, "Your margin is my opportunity, and understanding overhead is how you protect your margin from becoming someone else's opportunity." Without applying overhead accurately, next gen would be like those custom builders on Reddit who charge $50 to build a PC and wonder why they're broke. They forgot overhead exists. Ray Dalio teaches us truth, or more precisely an accurate understanding of reality, is the essential foundation for any good outcome. And this $666,250 is the truth about what infrastructure costs to maintain. Problem 5. Total manufacturing cost added to work in process. Question: what is the total manufacturing cost added to work in process? Answer: $1,746,250. Here's where all streams converge into one mighty river of cost. Direct materials, $480,000, plus direct labor, $600,000, plus applied overhead, $666,250 equals $1,746,250 total manufacturing cost added to work in process. This number represents the complete transformation of random components into gaming greatness, like how your random skills eventually combine into actual gameplay competence. Let me break down these proportions because they tell a fascinating story about modern manufacturing. Materials are only 27.5% of total cost. Shocking when you consider these are physical products made of expensive components. But that's the power of customization and expertise adding value. Direct labor is 34.4%. Skilled technicians aren't cheap, and quality building takes time. You can't speedrun a custom loop water cooling installation without creating an expensive leak. Overhead is 38.1%, the largest single component, reflecting the massive infrastructure needed for custom manufacturing. Think about building your first PC versus your fifth. Your first build. The parts seemed like everything. You focused on getting that RTX 4090, that Ryzen 97950X. But by your fifth build, you realized the tools, testing equipment, workspace, and knowledge you've accumulated represent more value than the components themselves. That's exactly what this cost structure reveals. From a content creator perspective, making a gaming YouTube video has visible costs, camera, PC, games, but invisible costs, editing software subscriptions, render time, thumbnail creation, background music licenses, emotional damage from comments that often exceed the visible ones. Next-gen's cost structure shows the same reality. Warren Buffett reminds us that It's better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. And this cost structure shows NextGen is a wonderful company. They're adding over $1 million of value through expertise and infrastructure, not just marking up components. The fact that overhead exceeds materials tells you this isn't a commodity business. It's a value creation business. As Peter Thiel writes in 0 to 1, competition is for losers, and NextGen avoids competition by adding $1,746,250 of specialized value that garage builders can't replicate. Problem 6. Cost of goods manufactured. Question. What is the cost of completed jobs, cost of goods manufactured? Answer. $1,680,000. The cost of goods manufactured represents the total cost of all Phantom X systems completed during the year, calculated by solving our work-in-process equation, beginning WIP, $18,000, plus manufacturing costs, added, $1,746,250, minus ending WIP, unknown, equals cost of goods, manufactured $1,680,000. This means ending WIP equals $84,250, representing builds still in progress, like your rank placement matches that you started but haven't finished, because the teammates are trash. Think about this $1,680,000 as graduation day for gaming systems. These builds have absorbed all their materials, labor, and overhead, past quality control, and are ready for their final boss battle, the customer. It's like when you finally complete that massive RPG you've been working on for months. The journey, work in process, is complete, and now it's a finished experience, finished goods. The fact that cost of goods manufactured, $1,680,000, is less than costs added, $1,746,250, tells us NextGen has more work in process at year end than they started with. Business is growing, orders are flowing, and somewhere right now, a technician is carefully applying thermal paste to what will become someone's dream machine. From a business perspective, this is exactly what you want to see. Increasing work in process from $18,000 to $84,250 suggests growing demand and complexity. Maybe they're building more elaborate custom loops, or perhaps orders are backing up because demand exceeds capacity. Either way, it's a good problem. Malcolm Gladwell discusses in Outliers how success comes from being in the right place at the right time with the right preparation. NextGen's $1,680,000 in completed systems shows they're prepared. They can take raw components and transform them into finished products at scale. This isn't three friends building PCs in a garage. This is industrial scale custom manufacturing. As Henry Ford said, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. And these completed goods represent all three. Components came together, stayed together through the build process, and successfully became sellable products. Problem 7. Ending balance in work in process. Question. What is the ending balance in work in process? Answer. $84,250. We calculate this using the work in process T account formula. Beginning WIP, $18,000, plus total manufacturing costs, added $1,746,250, minus cost of goods manufactured, $1,680,000, equals ending WIP, $84,250. This $84,250 represents NextGen's pipeline of dreams, partially completed Phantom X systems in various stages of assembly, like your Steam library of partially completed games that you swear you'll finish someday. The increase from $18,000 to $84,250, a 368% growth, tells a story of business expansion and increasing complexity. Think about it like your progression through a semester. Beginning WIP is like your assignments at the start of term, barely started. Cost added is all the work you put in throughout. Cost of goods manufactured is what you actually submitted. And ending WIP is those 3 papers you're definitely finishing over break. This ending balance represents real customer orders in progress. Someone's dream build with a custom hardline loop that takes 20 hours to perfect. Another's silent streaming setup requiring special acoustic dampening, and probably at least one RGB monstrosity that could guide planes to landing. In gaming terms, this is like having multiple game saves at different progression points. One at 20% completion, another at 60%, another at 95% just before the final boss. Each represents invested time and resources that haven't yet reached payoff. From a cash flow perspective, this $84,250 is money spent but not yet recoverable through sales. It's investment in future revenue. Ray Dalio says, "Pain plus reflection equals progress," and this WIP represents the pain of investment before the progress of sales. The fact that it's growing from $18,000 to $84,250 suggests NextGen is scaling up, taking on more complex builds, or both. Consider what this means strategically. NextGen has enough confidence in future sales to let WIP grow 368%. They're not rushing builds to convert to cash. They're taking time to maintain quality. As Steve Jobs said, quality is more important than quantity. And this WIP balance shows NextGen choosing quality over quick turnover. Total actual manufacturing overhead incurred. Question: what is the total actual manufacturing overhead cost incurred? Answer: $650,000. The actual overhead calculation combines 2 elements. Indirect labor $150,000, plus other manufacturing overhead costs like depreciation, insurance, and utilities, $500,000, equals total actual overhead, $650,000. This is reality punching through the estimates, like when you budget 2 hours for a gaming session, but check the clock and it's been 6. Compare this to what we applied, $666,250, and you'll notice we overestimated by $16,250. We were conservative in our predictions, like assuming every match will go to overtime when calculating how long your gaming session will last. This $650,000 in actual overhead represents the real cost of keeping the lights on, machines running, and factory functioning. The $150,000 in indirect labor includes quality control techs, who stress test every system, supervisors who ensure nobody's cutting corners, and maintenance staff who keep equipment calibrated. The $500,000 in other overhead covers depreciation on those $50,000 testing stations, insurance, because one bad custom loop could flood everything, utilities, those test benches running, 24/7, burn electricity like crypto mining, property taxes, and all the other invisible costs of running a manufacturing facility. Think about your own gaming setup's hidden costs. You track the GPU purchase, but what about electricity for those all-night sessions, internet allocation, wear on your peripherals, the chair that's slowly destroying your posture, and the energy drinks that fuel your raids? That's your personal overhead, and it's probably more than you think. Warren Buffett says, "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, and actual overhead is the tide going out on your cost estimates." NextGen's tide went out and they were wearing swim trunks, only $16,250 off on $650,000 is remarkably accurate estimating. As Charlie Munger notes, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And the incentive to estimate overhead accurately is to price products profitably. NextGen clearly has the right incentives in place. Problem 9. Manufacturing overhead under or overapplied. Question: is manufacturing overhead underapplied or overapplied? By how much? Answer: overapplied by $16,250. The calculation is straightforward, but the implications are profound. Applied overhead $666,250. Actual overhead $650,000. Overapplied overhead $16,250. This means next-gen charged products more overhead than actually occurred, like splitting a dinner bill evenly when you only had a salad while everyone else had steak. This $16,250 over application is actually good news dressed as an accounting adjustment. Overapplied overhead means next-gen was conservative in their estimates, building in a buffer against uncertainty. It's like overestimating your exam study time needs. Better to have time left over than to run out mid-exam. Think about it from a gaming perspective. You're planning a raid and estimate it'll take 3 hours, so you block off that time. It actually takes 2.5 hours. You overapplied your time estimate by 30 minutes. That's better than underestimating and having people leave mid-raid because they didn't plan enough time. In business terms, this overapplication means products looked slightly more expensive to produce than reality. If NextGen was making pricing decisions based on applied overhead, they might have been slightly overpriced, potentially losing some price-sensitive sales. But that's better than the alternative, underpricing and losing money on every sale. From a competitive standpoint, this $16,250 represents a hidden advantage. Competitors looking at NextGen's prices might think they're achieving those margins with $666,250 in overhead, when actually it's only $650,000. It's like playing poker and letting opponents think you have a worse hand than you do. Malcolm Gladwell talks about desirable difficulties in David and Goliath, challenges that seem like disadvantages but actually create strength. Overapplied overhead is a desirable difficulty. It forces conservative pricing that protects margins. As Ray Dalio says, the biggest mistake investors make is to believe that what happened in the recent past is likely to persist. NextGen didn't assume their overhead estimates were perfect. They built in conservatism, and now they get to pocket the difference. Problem 10. Cost of goods available for sale. Question: what is the cost of goods available for sale? Answer: $1,715,000. The calculation builds our complete sellable inventory. Beginning finished goods, $35,000, plus cost of goods manufactured, $1,680,000, equals cost of goods available for sale, $1,715,000. This represents NextGen's entire arsenal of completed Phantom X systems ready to ship to eager gamers. It's like your full inventory before a boss battle, everything you could possibly use to win. This $1,715,000 is the summit of the manufacturing mountain. All production efforts have culminated in this pool of sellable gaming systems. Think of it like having your entire game library downloaded and ready to play, not just wish-listed or in your cart. These aren't promises or potential. These are completed products ready to generate revenue. The composition matters enormously here. Only $35,000, 2%, is beginning inventory from last year, while $1,680,000, 98%, is fresh production. This is like having mostly new releases in your library versus old games you never finished. Fresh inventory sells faster, commands better prices, and doesn't risk obsolescence. In the PC component world, old inventory is death. Last generation's graphics cards, previous RAM standards, outdated motherboard chipsets. They depreciate faster than a new car driving off the lot. NextGen's 98% fresh inventory suggests they're not sitting on outdated builds that nobody wants. From a cash conversion perspective, This $1,715,000 represents the maximum revenue generating potential from existing completed products. It's locked up cash, waiting for liberation through sales, like having $1.7 million in gaming gear that you could theoretically sell, but haven't yet. Sam Walton revolutionized retail by turning inventory faster than competitors, saying, "The goal as a company is to have customer service that is not just the best, but legendary." NextGen's fresh inventory position lets them deliver legendary service, latest components, newest features, no old stock being pushed on unsuspecting customers. As Jeff Bezos learned building Amazon, inventory is the root of all evil when it sits too long. But inventory is opportunity when it's fresh and ready to meet demand. Problem 11. Journal entry for cost of goods sold. Question: what is the journal entry to record the cost of goods sold? Answer: debit cost of goods sold $1,690,000. Credit finished goods inventory $1,690,000. This entry captures the moment when inventory becomes expense, asset becomes income statement impact, and NextGen's investments finally pay off, like when you finally cash in those gaming tournament winnings you've been holding on to. The $1,690,000 represents the cost of all Phantom X systems sold during the year, moving from the balance sheet, where they sat as assets, to the income statement, where they offset against revenue to show profit. Think about this like your gaming achievements finally converting to something tangible. You spent months grinding, improving, climbing ranks, building inventory, and now you're finally competing in paid tournaments, making sales. The cost of all that preparation, COGS, gets matched against your prize money, revenue, to see if you actually profited. This follows the matching principle, one of accounting's most sacred rules. Revenues and their related costs must be recognized in the same period, like how your K/D ratio only counts kills and deaths from the same match, not kills from today and deaths from last week. NextGen sold $2,800,000 worth of systems that cost $1,690,000 to make. That's a 65% markup that would make luxury brands jealous. The timing of this entry matters enormously. Recognizing COGS when revenue is recognized ensures profit accuracy. It's like only counting the cost of energy drinks during the tournament, not all the ones you drank practicing. The sale triggers the expense recognition. From a strategic perspective, this $1,690,000 COGS against $2,800,000 revenue shows NextGen's value proposition is working. Customers are willing to pay 65% above cost for the NextGen experience. The customization, quality, support, and brand prestige. Warren Buffett says, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get," and customers clearly believe they're getting value. Consider how this compares to component sellers like Newegg, who might mark up products 10 to 15%. NextGen's 65% markup shows they're not just reselling components. They're creating substantial value through expertise, customization, and brand building. Problem 12. Ending balance in finished goods. Question: what is the ending balance in finished goods? Answer: $25,000. Using our finished goods flow, beginning $35,000 plus cost of goods manufactured $1,680,000 minus cost of goods sold $1,690,000 equals ending finished goods $25,000. NextGen practically cleared out their finished inventory, dropping from $35,000 to just $25,000. That's like selling your entire game collection, except for that one title you keep for nostalgia. This 28.6% reduction in finished goods inventory tells multiple stories, all of them good. First, NextGen sold more than they produced. $1,690,000 sold versus $1,680,000 manufactured, meaning demand exceeded supply. In gaming terms, they're sold out like PS5s at launch. Customers want more than NextGen can build. Think about what $25,000 in finished goods means for a company selling $3,000 plus gaming systems. That's maybe 8 to 9 completed builds sitting in inventory. They're running leaner than your wallet after Steam Summer Sale. This is intentional and brilliant. Finished custom PCs depreciate rapidly, components become outdated, and customer preferences shift. From a cash flow perspective, this is beautiful. NextGen converted $10,000 of old inventory into cash, $35,000 beginning minus, $25,000 ending equals $10,000, reduction, improving liquidity. It's like finally selling those collectibles you've been hoarding. Suddenly you have cash instead of stuff. The lean ending inventory also suggests strong sales momentum heading into next year. They're not struggling to move product. They're struggling to keep product in stock. This is the problem every business wants. Too much demand, not enough supply. As Jeff Bezos discovered, lean inventory is a forcing function for operational excellence. With only $25,000 in finished goods, NextGen must be operationally excellent or they'll stock out and lose sales. This tiny buffer means their production and sales are tightly synchronized. Malcolm Gladwell would call this a positive constraint, a limitation that actually drives improvement. The constraint of minimal finished goods forces NextGen to be efficient, responsive, and customer-focused. They can't hide behind inventory. They must perform. Problem 13. Adjusted cost of goods sold. Question. Assuming the company closes its underapplied or overapplied overhead to cost of goods sold, what is the adjusted cost of goods sold? Answer. $1,673,750. Here's where we true up fantasy to reality. Unadjusted COGS, $1,690,000. Overapplied overhead, $16,250. Adjusted COGS, $1,673,750. We're removing the excess overhead we charge to products, like getting a partial refund when you realize you were overcharged for extra guac you didn't actually get. This adjustment transforms NextGen's profitability picture. Original gross profit was $2,800,000 revenue, $1,690,000. COGS equals $1,110,000, but adjusted gross profit is $2,800,000. $1,673,750 equals $1,126,250. That extra $16,250 in profit was hiding behind conservative overhead estimates, like finding a $20 bill in your winter coat pocket. Think about this like discovering your gaming expenses are actually lower than tracked. You budgeted $100 per month for gaming subscriptions, but checking your bank statement shows only $85 per month. That $15 difference might seem small monthly, but annually it's $180 you didn't know you had. From an investor perspective, this adjustment matters. The original 39.6% gross margin, $1,110,000 divided by $2,800,000, becomes 40.2% after adjustment, $1,126,250 divided by $2,800,000. That 0.6% improvement might seem trivial, but on $2.8 million in sales, it's real money, and it shows NextGen is even more profitable than their conservative accounting suggested. This adjustment process is why month-end closings matter in real companies. It's when estimated meets actual, assumptions meet reality, and true profitability emerges. It's like finally calculating your real GPA after grades post versus your anxiety-driven estimates. Ray Dalio teaches, radical transparency is critical for success, and this adjustment is radical transparency, showing true costs rather than estimated ones. NextGen isn't hiding behind conservative estimates. They're revealing actual profitability. As Warren Buffett says, accounting is the language of business, and this adjustment is like correcting a translation error. The story was good before, but it's even better when told accurately. Problem 14, gross margin calculation. Question, what is the gross margin? Answer, $1,126,250 or 40.2%. The calculation reveals NextGen's true value creation. Sales revenue, $2,800,000. Adjusted COGS, $1,673,750. Gross margin, $1,126,250. As a percentage, $1,126,250 divided by $2,800,000 equals 40.2%. This means for every dollar of Phantom X sales, NextGen keeps 40.2 cents after covering all manufacturing costs. That's better margins than McDonald's, but not quite Apple level. Let me put this 40.2% in perspective across industries. Software companies like Microsoft hit 80 to 90% because copying code costs nothing. Restaurants achieve 60 to 70% because food is cheap, but labor isn't. Retail struggles at 25 to 35% because they're just middlemen. NextGen's 40.2% in custom manufacturing is actually impressive. It shows they're adding substantial value, not just marking up components. Think about your own life's gross margin. If you work 20 hours a week at $15 an hour, $300 revenue, but spend $100 on gas, food during shifts, and work clothes, your gross margin is $200 or 66.7%. NextGen's 40.2% means they're keeping less per dollar, but processing many more dollars. This margin tells us NextGen isn't competing on price, they're competing on value. Like how Apple never tries to match Android prices, NextGen can maintain margins because customers value the customization, quality, and brand. They're not selling components, they're selling dreams with RGB lighting. From a sustainability perspective, 40.2% gross margin provides cushion for market downturns. If component costs spike 10%, NextGen can absorb it. If demand softens requiring discounts, they have room. This margin is their armor against competition and market volatility. Warren Buffett looks for companies with consistent high gross margins because it indicates pricing power, the ability to raise prices without losing customers. NextGen's 40.2% suggests they have this power. Customers aren't buying generic gaming PCs, they're buying Phantom X systems. As Peter Thiel writes, competition is for losers, and NextGen's margins show they're not competing on price. They're in their own category where 40% margins are sustainable because customers see unique value worth paying for. Problem 15. Net operating income. Question, what is the net operating income? Answer, $519,250. The final calculation brings everything home. Gross margin, $1,126,250. Selling and administrative salaries, $240,000. Other selling and administrative expenses, $367,000 equals net operating income, $519,250. This represents 18.5% of revenue, $519,250 divided by $2,800,000, which is exceptional for manufacturing. After covering all operating costs, NextGen keeps 18.5 cents of every sales dollar. That's like keeping 18.5% of your paycheck after all expenses, which for most college students would be a miracle. This $519,250 is what's left after paying for everything. The builders, the sellers, the managers, the advertising, the sponsored esports teams, the warranty support, literally everything except interest and taxes. It's pure operational profit from making and selling gaming systems. Think about the journey from $2,800,000 in revenue to $519,250 in operating income. It's like starting a game with 2,800 hit points and ending with 519 after all the battles. You took damage, costs, but you survived and won, profited. Each expense category was a boss fight that had to be conquered. The 18.5% operating margin separates great businesses from merely good ones. Amazon operates at 3 to 5% margins, Walmart at 2 to 3%, but Apple achieves 30%. NextGen's 18.5% puts them in premium territory. Not quite Apple, but far above commodity manufacturers. This suggests either exceptional efficiency, premium pricing power, or both. From a growth perspective, this $519,250 provides fuel for expansion. It's enough to fund R&D for new products, open new facilities, or expand marketing. Unlike companies operating on razor-thin margins, NextGen has room to invest in their future while remaining profitable. Malcolm Gladwell's Matthew Effect states, "The rich get richer," and NextGen's strong operating income creates exactly this dynamic. They can afford better equipment, improving efficiency, better talent, improving products, and better marketing, improving sales, creating a virtuous cycle of growing advantages. As Charlie Munger says, the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily, and NextGen's consistent operating income enables the compounding of advantages that separate winners from losers in business. Integration, the complete manufacturing symphony. Let's step back and witness the complete masterpiece, how NextGen orchestrates the flow from $510,000 in component purchases to $519,250 in operating income, a transformation that would make alchemists weep with envy. Every dollar flows through the system with purpose, tracked with precision that would make speedrunners proud. We watched materials, $480,000, merge with direct labor, $600,000, and overhead, $666,250, to create work in process, which became finished goods, $1,680,000, which became cost of goods sold, $1,690,000, adjusted to $1,673,750, which when matched against revenue, $2,000,000 or $800,000, and reduced by operating expenses, $607,000, produced operating income of $519,250. This is what Peter Drucker meant by, "What gets measured gets managed." NextGen measures every step, therefore can manage every step, therefore can optimize every step. It's like tracking every stat in your gameplay, K/D, accuracy, objective time. The data enables improvement. Think about how this applies everywhere in modern business. Netflix tracks cost per hour of content viewed. Uber tracks cost per mile driven. Universities track, or should track, cost per student graduated. Without this granular tracking, you're flying blind, hoping for profit but not knowing how to achieve it. The beauty lies in the connections, how beginning inventory affects ending inventory, how overhead application affects gross margin, how every decision ripples through the system. Change the overhead rate by $1, and operating income shifts by $41,000. It's like how changing your mouse sensitivity by 1% can transform your gaming performance. Small adjustments, big impacts. Ray Kroc discovered with McDonald's that success wasn't about making the best burgers, but about understanding and controlling the cost of making good enough burgers consistently. NextGen's mastery of cost flow lets them price competitively while maintaining margins, the holy grail of manufacturing. This system is anti-fragile, as Nassim Taleb would say. Shocks to the system, cost increases, demand fluctuations, are absorbed and adapted to rather than breaking the business. The detailed tracking enables rapid response to change. Strategic implications, the competitive moat. Understanding NextGen's job order costing system reveals their competitive moat, the advantages that protect them from competition like a fortress protects from invasion. They know costs per job, per component, per hour of labor. This knowledge transforms from data into strategic weaponry. Think about what this knowledge enables. A customer wants rush delivery. NextGen knows exactly what overtime costs and can price accordingly. Someone wants a unique modification. They can quote accurately without guessing. A competitor undercuts prices. NextGen knows exactly how low they can go while maintaining profitability. The 40.2% gross margin and 18.5% operating margin tell us NextGen isn't playing the commodity game. They're not competing with mass producers like Dell or HP on price. They're in the premium custom space where margins reflect value creation, not just component assembly. Like how Ferrari doesn't compete with Toyota on price per horsepower. Consider how this knowledge compounds over time. Every job teaches them something. Which components fail, which configurations are problematic, which customers are profitable. This learning curve advantage, what BCG calls experience curve effects, means NextGen gets better and cheaper over time while maintaining prices. Warren Buffett says, "In business, the rearview mirror is always clearer than the windshield, but job order costing makes NextGen's windshield clearer. They can see costs before they're final, profits before they're realized, problems before they're disasters. They're driving with GPS while competitors use paper maps." From your perspective as future business leaders, this is the difference between hoping and knowing. NextGen doesn't hope they're profitable. They know it down to the penny. They don't guess at prices. They calculate them. They don't wonder why profits vary. They can trace variations to specific jobs, customers, or components. The compound effect is real. Better costing leads to better pricing, which leads to better customer selection, which leads to better margins, which funds better capabilities, which enables better costing. It's a virtuous cycle that started with getting the accounting right. Your action plan, from student to strategic thinker. Here's your mission to transform this knowledge from academic exercise to practical power. First, find a local custom business, PC builders, auto customizers, tattoo artists, wedding planners, and analyze whether they use job order costing. If not, calculate how much money they're leaving on the table by averaging instead of specifying. This conversation alone could land you a consulting gig or job offer. Second, apply job order costing to your own life projects. Pick something you do repeatedly but with variation. Maybe you do freelance design, tutoring, or content creation. Track the true cost of each job, including your time, materials, software subscriptions, and overhead like internet and equipment depreciation. You'll discover some clients are gold mines, while others are actually costing you money. Third, use this in job interviews. When they ask about your skills, explain how you understand cost flows from raw materials through to operating income. Draw NextGen's cost flow on a whiteboard. Watch their eyes light up as they realize you understand business, not just textbook accounting. You're not a student who memorized formulas. You're a strategic thinker who understands profitability. Fourth, track your education like a job order. Each class is a job. Track the true cost, including tuition allocation, books, supplies, time, opportunity cost, and stress-induced expenses. Discover which professors assign $2,000 worth of work for a 3-credit class versus those who assign $200. Use this for strategic course selection. Maximize learning per dollar spent. Fifth, create your own predetermined overhead rate. Take your fixed semester costs, rent, insurance, subscriptions, divided by productive hours. Apply this rate to activities to understand true costs. That free campus event isn't free if it uses 3 hours of your time at $15 per hour overhead rate. As Malcolm Gladwell concludes in Outliers, success comes from opportunity plus preparation. Understanding job order costing is preparation. You now see costs where others see confusion, profit where others see prices, strategy where others see accounting. Warren Buffett reads 500 pages a day because he understands that knowledge compounds. These 15 problems are your first deposit in that knowledge account. The returns will compound throughout your career. Where the numbers speak, we must listen. And you're now fluent. You understand not just how to track costs, but why. Accurate tracking drives competitive advantage. You see that next-gen success isn't luck, but systematic cost management that you can replicate. To learn accounting, you must do accounting, and you just did. But more importantly, you learn to think strategically about costs, to see business as a system of flows that can be measured, managed, and optimized. Go forth and apply this knowledge. The world is full of businesses guessing at job costs when they could be knowing. Be the one who brings clarity to confusion, profit to potential, and strategic thinking to tactical problems. Class dismissed, but your journey as a strategic cost analyst, that's just beginning.